The CPI report, Child Protection in Iowa, brought to you by Vocal, Victims of Child Abuse Laws. You can watch our program on Mediacom Channel 15 in Greater Des Moines, Iowa, Sunday afternoon at 1 o'clock. And again, it's repeated on Wednesday evening at 9:30. You can also watch the program every other Thursday at 4:30 in Council Bluffs on Cox Channel 23. You can email us at vocaliowa@mchsi.com. My telephone number in Des Moines is 515 276 3956, and John's number is 515 282 2672. My name is Don Burgmaier, and with me at the controls is my co-host,
John Harvey, and welcome to the CPI report. CPI, that stands for Child Protection in Iowa. That's one area in which we work, and our mission is twofold. One, to influence public policy, and one, to work with families on a one-to-one basis who are having difficulties with the Department of Human Services. We do run into some legal problems from time to time, and when you do that, it's a good idea to have somebody around that has a good slant on some introduction into what legal problems are all about and how to maneuver around them. Terrance Walker has been with us for a number of months, and we're going to turn to Terrance Walker, who has with him by telephone a guest today. So in order to introduce that guest, we're going to now turn to Terrance Walker.
Thanks again for having me on the show, Don and John. Yes, I am the self-proclaimed judge of the judges because no one else is doing it. There's not a single judicial qualification commission or any similar board of authority that is exercising any authority that's doing anything about these judges. And, you know, throughout my, I guess I should say, throughout my whole experience with the judiciary and my whole experience being the self-proclaimed judge of the judges, I've met a number of legal reformers through various internet chat rooms, legal discussion groups, you know, because the internet has basically connected all of us, and we get to see the problem on a more personal, person-to-person basis, because the media obviously is not playing the true problems with the judicial system up the way it should. I'm finding that there's a lot of people out there that are affected by the system. And so what we have came upon, luckily, not only do we have legal discussion groups online, but our guest that I have on the phone right now, whose name is Zena Crenshaw, she is the managing editor of what is a brand new legal reform magazine called Diogenes. And this hit the shelves in September of this year, and it's going across the country right now. A couple of the guests that we've had on the show before, Karen Huffer, talked about Julie Starr Alexander. Both of them have articles in this magazine. And it's a really interesting magazine. You get all different aspects of the legal reform movement addressed, veterans, problems with the VA, veterans hospitals and veterans benefits and things of that nature, whistleblowers and the problems that they face and the retaliation and things of that nature. But I don't want to talk too much about the magazine. I think it'd be better to have the guests We got on the phone Zena Crenshaw. Hello, Zena. How you
Hi,
doing today?
Terrance. How are you doing?
I'm doing wonderful.
That's good.
It's good to have you on the show. Finally, I've heard so much about you, and we've talked just recently and got to get acquainted just briefly over the phone. Um, what what motivated you to do this magazine?
Well, our prime motivation was to expand the messages, particularly of grassroots organizations, beyond the legal reform and government reform communities. We figured we needed to create an accessible medium to reach out to not only those people who have connected on the internet, as you mentioned, but go out into the larger community and appeal to civic-minded Americans who are not necessarily activists, but message. And the benefit of a traditional magazine is you don't have to wait for people to seek out your message. You can just simply get it to them by distributing the magazine. So we wanted to create a high-quality national media outlet that was receptive to the messages of government reform activists.
Oh, wow, that's a mouthful. Were you admitted to the bar?
Yes, I am
Okay.
still a member of the federal bar, the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals, and
Okay.
some of the federal courts here in the state of Indiana. But I haven't been involved in any traditional law practice since about 1998. Since about that time, I've been full-time a legal reform activist.
Okay. And so, did you, during your experience with the legal establishment, um, would you say that you encountered some shady activities within the judiciary or within the legal establishment itself?
Well, I practice plaintiff's personal injury law in
Okay.
Indiana, which is a more of a pro-defense oriented state, and that creates its own set of dynamics. And actually, I got involved in legal reform after representing a little girl who had nearly died from an adverse prescription drug reaction. And the court threw the case out, but what really sparked the controversy is when he sanctioned the little girl and I for a theory that we had advanced in the case. So I challenged the sanction with community support. And even though the sanction was reversed on appeal, we were otherwise left without any relief for basically being put through the ringer. I called for the judge to be investigated. I filed private lawsuits trying to vindicate myself and my client. And all of it went nowhere except that I was repeatedly investigated and subject to certain forms of disciplinary action. So, in that sense, yes, I have encountered inequities in the legal system. But the silver lining of it all is that I become acquainted with people all across the country and even in some foreign countries that have similar experiences. So now I'm enjoying my new career as a judicial legal reform activist.
Well, that's good. I wish there were more of you within the legal establishment that had the guts or the intestinal fortitude to stand up against what's actually going on. I see this a lot where lawyers are actually retaliated against by judges um, with impunity. I is this a common case that the judiciary um, they don't act on any of the complaints against the judiciary, but then instead they'll come back against the lawyer and basically try to get them disbarred.
Well, the feedback we've gotten from across the country would suggest that seems to be a problem. In fact, one of the first projects that our organization sponsored was some proposed federal legislation called the Weinstock Act. And basically what this legislation accomplishes is puts in place some minimal procedural protections for a lawyer that's facing discipline based on public criticism of a judicial officer. And it requires that such complaints be submitted to a jury, which would basically be convening an available grand jury. And we're doing that recognizing that if our organization is going to be trying to challenge judicial misconduct, we at times have to have licensed attorneys who can represent our constituents without mortal fear of retribution. So we are very much a staunch advocate on behalf of what we call whistleblowing lawyers and judges. If we want members of the legal profession to be a part of reforming the profession, we've got to be willing to protect them when they come forward, or at least try to help protect them.
Wow, and that's I couldn't agree with you more. The name of the book name of the magazine, Diogenes.
Yes.
Why Diogenes?
Well, it just seems so appropriate. As you undoubtedly know, Diogenes was a Greek philosopher, and he is the one that's credited for searching day and night with a lighted lantern looking for an honest man. And he was always extolling public officials to be virtuous and to be honest. And we felt that what would be a more perfect representative of a magazine that's committed to government reform and addressing various problems with the operation of government, whether it's the legal system and other executive and legislative branches of government.
Wow. Yeah, I think that name really fits.
Yes. We were quite pleased. Now, we don't want the magazine to be a trade journal. This is not just written for activists. It's basically written for all concerned Americans. We try in our content and in the appearance of the magazine to make it interesting for all Americans, and particularly those who are civic-minded. We often indicate that what we're striving for is a publication that's a combination of like a Time magazine, a Life magazine, and maybe like a national law journal. It's all rolled in one. So this is not, just for veteran activists. This is really what we want it to be for all Americans, and we also want it to be balanced and solution-oriented. This is not a subversive publication. This is an honest and fair treatment of various problems that are associated with the operation of our government.
That Diogenes reminds me of one of our former directors of the Department of Human Services, who, when she came to office, said that she was going to look through the agency to find someone who was doing something right.
Yeah.
And I said, good luck.
Yes, and we need to probably get some type of award and call it Diogenes.
Diogenes Award.
Well, I find that fitting. That also that you're aiming for the mainstream, and and not so much as just an activist group. Do you find that that the justice system or the legal establishment and the media tend to want to marginalize anybody with a beef with the legal establishment as someone that fits this mold, just not as a person that could be of the mainstream?
Well, that certainly seems to have been the case. However, I think we're at an unprecedented time in our country's history, just in this last year, of public expressions of discontent with the judiciary. And you have so many mainstream commentators who are talking about problems with judicial self-policing. And so the ability of the establishment of the government, what have you, to continue to characterize us as the lone disgruntled litigant is, I think, coming to a close. And that's why I think that Diogenes is such an important outlet for us at this time, that we're really hoping that the government reform communities embrace. Because really the plan is this, even though we want, our market is, again, all civic-minded Americans, we really depend on government reform activists to support the magazine because we largely distribute it um, freely, among the general public because we want the message to be out there. But we
Right.
can only do that if people who are committed to reform, whether it's legal reform, other forms of government reform, if they actually come in and support the magazine by advertising in it, submitting articles to it, and subscribing.
Okay.
If the hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of people who identify themselves are seen to be uh, closely associated with government reform, if they would come in at a adequate enough numbers and actually, again, support the magazine through their writing and through their advertising and through their subscriptions, then we want to see at some point where we're largely just giving the magazine out to people in the community who are perhaps civic-minded but not activists.
Okay. And
And we've had some luck. In fact, recently we've gotten a commitment from a major distributor, and I'm just thrilled at the idea. I mean, I travel quite a bit because of my work, and the idea of getting off an airplane and seeing people that I recognize from legal reform and government reform at bookstores, at airports, or at coffee houses. I think that's some powerful stuff, particularly when you're operating on a grassroots basis.
well, I think it definitely turned the tide as far as what's being put out there uh, as it respects the legal establishment, because there's definitely not a lot other than the Terry Scheibel case. They played
Yes.
that out. I mean, they played that out, but I mean, rightfully so,
Hmm.
because the woman's life basically was hanging in the balance over between courts.
Exactly.
But so the National Judicial Conduct and Disability Law Project,
Hmm.
is that basically your organization or the organization that you had that started this magazine?
Yes, we're the
Okay.
publisher at this point. Um, our name may not seem catchy until you see that it's a takeoff on the Judicial Conduct and Disability Act, which
Oh, okay.
allows complaints to be filed against federal judges. And the prevailing wisdom is that those complaints are usually dismissed, in fact,
Yeah.
almost all the time. So our National Judicial Conduct and Disability Law Project is basically just a sarcastic twist to that provision of federal law. And what our primary effort is to expand the body of law that defines judicial misconduct and that authorizes private and governmental claims based on judicial misconduct and sets out pleadings and proof standards. That we're primarily trying to get all of that better defined and expanded. And we do it, we have a multidiscipline approach. We basically put together a team of professionals and experts as the dynamics of a case require, and they oversee or implement a strategy that best ensures that a significant case will be resolved on just terms. And a key element of these cases is an allegation of judicial misconduct.
Yeah, and I find that interesting that you said that, because that's been my number one beef with the whole um, idea of these judicial commissions. There's no case law to show what's necessarily outside the bounds,
Yes.
uh, and then all the time it seems like we get something back from these commissions. Judicial Qualification Commission here in Iowa, for example, sent us a letter saying a videotape of a judge basically threatening these guys for arrest for handing out leaflets outside the courtroom. Um, they said that was insufficient evidence of judicial misconduct, and
It's so
we have
nice to be
nowhere to go
talking.
to say, well, this other case said this was a standard. You know, I don't understand it. But what was you going to say, Zena?
I was going to say it's so nice to be talking with such an informed host because that's part of the problem, and particularly if you look at the context of professional discipline, most of the time a lawyer can be disciplined for making a false or reckless statement regarding a judge. And what seems to happen is that the government is supposed to prove that your statement is false. That rarely happens, but what happens is you get disciplined because they determine that your statement is reckless. And there's no clear guidance on what is a proper statement, what the bounds are. There's no clear indication of what you can say or what you can't say. It's just almost whatever you said is going to end up being determined reckless.
And that's determined by the judge.
Exactly, or whatever commission that's supposed to be evaluating the situation. So the disciplinary commissions, the commissions that regulate the conduct of lawyers and judges, even though you may find that they're unresponsive when you're a private citizen trying to allege misconduct, if you are a member of the judiciary or of the legal profession and you publicly criticize a judicial officer, you'll find a swift sword through those various regulatory agencies.
Yeah, they'll retaliate on you real good. One guy's website that I checked out is a judge out in, I believe, Washington State, DougSchaefer.com. This guy had basically said something against the judiciary up there, and they kicked him out for about a year or so, and he put everything online. I thought that was a very interesting case. But if you ever get a chance, have you ever seen his website?
I think I briefly visited his website. I'm certainly aware of his activism. I don't have a lot of detail on it.
Yeah, he's a very interesting guy. And did you have anything else to share with us about the magazine? I was going to let you also give the magazine a plug if you wanted to, because I know it's for a good cause.
A shameless plug. Well,
shameless plug.
Just to encourage members of the different government reform communities to really go online, and they can visit us at njcdlp.org, and navigate to Diogenes. And this is an important medium for us. It creates a lot of new opportunities. It allows us to go beyond our electronic communications that basically only allow us to communicate among ourselves and reach out to a larger community that is sympathetic and supportive of our messages.
Okay. And is the magazine's going to be the same price if it gets big distribution, or?
No, we certainly are willing to negotiate discount rates. We can work with organizations if they'd like to make it available as a benefit of their membership. We have a program in place where if you become the distributor, if you can get the magazine available for sale at a retail outlet, then whatever proceeds are associated with that arrangement belongs to you as an activist, so it can be used as a fundraising tool. And the magazine has to be supported financially. However, that can be done with relatively modest support in the government reform communities. The next step after getting it financially supported is to get it widely circulated. So we're always interested in both of those goals. Okay.
And they can go online and order this?
Yes.
At the website. We're showing the website now. It's www.njcdlp.org.
Yes, or they can either call us toll-free and order it by phone as well.
1-800-478-4439, right?
Actually, it's 1-888.
1-888. Mm-hmm. I seen the number. I just read it wrong. I'm sorry.
Okay, good.
The annual prescription prescription price.
$29.
Subscription price.
Yes. Yes, our annual subscription is $29. Our newsstand price is kind of pricey. It's $9.25 per issue, and we're going to try to chalk it full of so much practical information that people will gladly pay that amount. And we're looking, our next, in fact, I'm going to be going to Washington, D.C. We're going to be working with some government whistleblowers who are going to flood Capitol Hill with our publication and really use it as a tool to lobby Congress. So we're going to have a lot of practical information in there. Again, we'll be solution-oriented. We're not going to just bombard people with a lot of problems. We're going to talk about solutions.
Well, that's good that you're doing that. And did you have anything else to share with us before we end this interview here?
I just want to tell you how much I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you. I've heard so much good things about the program, and as well as you personally, Terrance. And I look forward to us working more closely in the future.
Same here. I've heard so much wonderful things about you, and you've impressed me further beyond those things that I've been hearing about you. But anyway, Zena, it's been wonderful having you on the show. Did you have one question for us?
I've got one question for you. Based on my situation of 20 years, I've been doing battle with the DHS, the Iowa Department of Human Services. And just recently, I have went into the Supreme Court. In the meantime, I have filed a complaint against 2 attorney generals for lying. One of them lied 10 years ago, and that's the reason why I'm still partly in the system right now. And the second one took a case just in the last 6 months and lied. My question is, does your organization have information available to help in a complaint against an attorney like that?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that. We've struggled to figure out a way that we can help people who are dealing with what we call family law issues, either child protective issues, DHS, because the problems are, even though a problem with the judge's conduct is often the common denominator, they're so fact-specific that it's difficult to respond to it on a systematic basis. So what I would encourage you to do is to contact me by email, and we can perhaps devise a strategy to tackle that problem. And perhaps your case can be a gateway to dealing with those type of issues. That's what we try to work through class actions, through national campaigns, as opposed to just cases that only impact the individual parties. And again, that becomes a challenge in very fact-based family law cases. But we certainly, if it involves judicial corruption, then it's part of our expertise.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and again, Zena, you've impressed me even beyond every great thing that I've heard about you. Exceeded all my expectations. And again, we'll probably have you on the show sometime soon if you're not busy in Washington, D.C. or something like that.
Well, I certainly will always make myself available for you.
Okay, that sounds wonderful. Hey, thanks for letting us have you on the show.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Have a wonderful one. Bye-bye. And with that, I'm going to turn this back over to you, John.
Okay, Terrance, you've told us and you promised us to bring good guests. You haven't brought good guests. You've brought great guests. So I really appreciate that kind of an interview, even though it's probably not as good as having an in-studio guest, but at least you're getting the content that is involved, and I think that's very important.
Well, she's impressed me even beyond further. I wasn't just saying that. She has impressed me further beyond what I even expected.
Yes, and of course, if you see this this magazine, you can become pretty easily impressed with what's going on.
And informed at the same time, by the way.
Yeah, what's that now?
I said as well as informed.
Yes.
By the same token.
And she has the background for doing some pretty marvelous things, I think. And I think Terrance, that it's going to take a combination of a lot of different groups, even though we don't march to the same drummer. We do have a common enemy, and I think that when you've got rats in the bureaucracy, that is a common enemy, and it seems as though we are deluged with some pretty rotten government, and of course they're always asking for 18% increases in pay, and a multitude of benefits. So that they certainly don't deserve, and I think they need to be weeded out. I think they need to be taught something called servanthood. They are the servants. We are the masters. We're the ones that's doing the paying. We're the ones that need the services. We are not their slaves. So I appreciate when you bring these people on board by telephone. I think I learned quite a bit from these interviews that you've had with individuals. And I wish I could afford a copy of the Diogenes magazine. I might have to somehow figure a way
that
to
one is yours to keep.
Splurge. Okay. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Well, we'll remind folks about that. And I think it'd be a good idea, for organizations that are watching to have that on your library shelves, so that people in your organization can at least thumb through that magazine, get some clever ideas about. She was talking about class action suits, and I think that's what it's going to take in many of these cases to clean things up.
Yeah, the thing I really like about the magazine also is that it has stuff covering all aspects of legal reform, from people that have problems with the VA hospitals, to getting their veterans benefits, to people that have problems with the Child Protective Services or the DHS, people that have problems with the judges, certain attorneys within the government, and then people that have problems because they have reported on government malfeasance and they've been retaliated against. I mean, there's a whole lot of spectrums of government malfeasance are tackled in one magazine. And I think it's so fitting to have the name Diogenes as the name for the magazine.
That was clever.
A guy walking around with a lamp day and night searching for an honest man, because I tell you what, you can go down to these courthouses, even to the Iowa Supreme Court house, and you can search day and night down there, and I guarantee you, you're going to be hard-pressed to find an honest judge. But I'll just turn this back over to you.
Okay.
I think I've taken up enough of the show already.
No, I think that's been well worth our time and effort on this program to look at things like that, because we know that someday there's going to be some solution found in this mess that we have with government as it interferes with family life. Sometimes these judges believe that they own the children and that their decisions will go forth. We're going to be talking a little bit about a 2,000-foot rule in which our General Assemblymen think that they're going to protect our children, when I think it's mom and dad's duty to protect the children. Well, there are some men in this state, some 100,000 men, 100,000 women who are divorced, and they're living lives that are far less than desirable lives. They love their children, and it's obvious that they do. They're paying enormous child support and bearing up under expenses that I don't know how in the world they do it, and how they can ever keep their attitudes sane. But here in Iowa, as in other places, fathers are beginning to rise up. And here are some mad fathers. That's men. Let's see if we can get a little bit of background on this. Mad Men United newsletter, and this is just it's madmenunited.org is the website, and this is a brand new website in order to unite some of the problems or let people at least express some of the problems that they're having. Some men are paying child support that is absolutely enormous child support, far more than what it would cost if he was permitted to live in his own home and raise his children. And some are driving distances of 350 miles in a weekend to see the children. Some men are paying flight charges on the airlines. If they live in Los Angeles and mother decided she was going to stay in Georgia, and the expense falls on the father to fly the children back and forth. That is a terrible thing. Did you have something to say there?
Yeah, I also seen an interesting tidbit online this past week where men that have been shown not to be the father are still being required by judges in some states to go ahead and continue paying child support. This to me is
because they took the father role.
This to me is crazy, I tell you.
Yeah, it's a noble thing to do, but if they've taken over the father role, but then to have the audacity of the court to treat a non-father as if he were as responsible as the natural father. Well,
especially when they've been duped.
Yeah, right, right. You bet. We have a lot of sad situations, and there's, like I say, 100,000 fathers and 100,000 mothers in Iowa who are a part of that, and I don't know the number of children who are involved in some of these situations. Now, some of the situations are tragically bad situations, and that's what divorce is meant to provide some way out. But obviously, we've taken this divorce thing and really run that into the ground, in which so many of first-time marriages and second-time marriages fail because somehow we've not taught our children anything about commitment. We're not too careful about the kind of partners that we seek and that we hitch up with. So I guess all of us can probably say yay and amen to that, can't we? Maybe we didn't do a real good job of scouting out who it is that we want to spend our life with, because that person should be as committed to us as we wanted to be committed to them. Well, there are going to be some repercussions to some of these things, but I think it's a good thing when men can get together and start to write about their situations. I spent money on a lawyer, is one of the articles in here. Man, do they spend money on lawyers, because they think that by doing so they'll solve their problems. We don't know for sure that that's going to do the trick, but I sent someone to, referred someone to one of the bureaucrats just last week, and the bureaucrat simply said, you need to contact a lawyer. Well, maybe that is the only thing that is going to solve some of these problems. I do know that there are some law enforcement people who look at the divorce decree and will go with father to the house and pick up the children when mother has just refused to give them to the father for visitation. So law enforcement has been somewhat helpful at times. Other times they will not be at all helpful, and that's when it's discouraging, especially if a father's driven 175 miles to pick up his children and he cannot talk to them. Another thing is when father tries to call the house and the mother picks up the phone or listens on the phone while he talks to children and then hangs up on father as he tries to talk to his own children. Now here's a father who is paying his child support uh, weekly and is doing a good job of providing for the children, but mother wants to take it out on him by denying him access to the children. And we're seeing this time after time after time. And it is the child who actually loses. So I say yay and amen to these organizations that have enough gumption that they want to get around to get together and to pool their resources and to use the internet to do some of these marvelous things. Turn now to some legislation coming up in the coming General Assembly, which assembles on the 9th day of January 2006. And I've talked on this program several times about the 2,000-foot rule. The 2,000-foot rule poses a huge problem in the General Assembly. They're going to try to ignore the problem and try to bypass the problem and simply sneak around and try to find out how they can amend it to make it look like something that is of value. Stop and think about it. What does the 2,000-foot rule do? It says to anyone who has served time or been charged even on a plea bargain and hasn't served time even, but has been convicted of some kind of crime against a child. Doesn't even have to be a sex crime, but we still call him a sex offender.
Does that include statutory rape?
That would include statutory rape.
Where there's a 19-year-old with a 15-year-old?
Correct. And a lot of these crimes where these people are rounded up, it may be 25 years ago. Maybe a 17-year-old who had sex with a 14-year-old. Now married with 3 children, and they're still after the sex offender. Why they are doing this, why I can't tell, except that I think it has something to do with this mentality that Jessica Gage was abducted, raped, and murdered, and that we got to do something about it. Well, the something that they're doing about it has nothing to do with the problem. You don't dream up a remedy for a problem that has no relationship to the problem. If your neighbor talks badly to you, you don't take a baseball bat to his windshield. That is not a proper remedy. And I think the 2,000-foot rule is as far away from any kind of remedy that you can possibly think of. And unfortunately, it is an unfunded mandate to law enforcement throughout the state, because we're going to have to determine whether people are in compliance with the state law. And that becomes an unfunded mandate to every county mountie, to every police officer that is in a state police car, or to local cops. So it's going, and some of the extra stuff that they hung on to a bill called House File 619 this last time around is going to run up in 4 years up to $12 million a year just to enforce the law. Not only did the 2,000-foot rule cause all kinds of distress by placing a 2,000-foot barrier around every daycare center and around every school, which means that those who are trying to live good lives after having served their time in prison, try to rejoin their family, try to get the kinds of services that it takes in order to reform themselves. Now we're going to herd these people off to some kind of a Devil's Island type of thing. But now we have communities, small communities, where these people might be able to find some refuge, that are taking it a step further and say, well, we don't want you in our community at all. Or if you come to our community, you can't loiter in the around swimming pools or libraries or any place where children might gather. How about if you ride your bicycle? Would you be permitted on the bike path? How about if you go to church? Would you be permitted to go to the church if there was a swimming pool next door? Would you be able to do a lot of the things that are constructive in the life of a good citizen if all of these laws are enforced by the state and by all the municipalities? Well, let's go back to this problem as it goes before the state legislature. First of all, it's a problem because it's a glowing example of a sheep mentality. One, once a direction is indicated, those in the General Assembly who simply vote with their colleagues. This is a sad situation where you find out how everyone else is voting, and you simply drop your vote in that direction. You don't have to do any thinking about it. This is not representative government if you're voting with the majority simply because someone else is voting that way. Each assemblyman must vote his own mind. I seriously believe that there are a few bills that are passed in which each assemblyman actually knows the content. If they do not know the content, it's far less likely that they will have any notion of the impact of the law that about which they are to pass. Not all impacts can be anticipated. Therefore, we have begun to use a new terminology. And how many times have you heard this? Unanticipated consequences. An unanticipated consequences arises when people don't think. With this one, there should have been alarm bells sounding all over. However, in the current biennium, the Assembly was guided by emotions surrounding the Jetseta Gate case in Cedar Rapids. A side note, the 2,000-foot rule would not have helped in the Jetseta case. Her attackers were known to her family, and they lived in another county. How would it have helped for them to live 2,000 feet away from Jetseta's school? Of all of the places in Iowa where children should have been safe, Cedar Rapids should have been the best if throwing money at a project is the appropriate strategy. $41 million were donated by nonprofit foundations to experiment with child protection issues. Little experiments, people trying to tweak families, found out they couldn't do it. The state pumped in a few million more. The money was wasted, the experiment didn't work, and the child was abducted, raped, and murdered. The legislature went about looking for answers and considered all kinds of measures, including reinstituting the death penalty. No one did much thinking about the impact of the 2,000-foot rule would have. This despite the fact that it was the focus of discussion for over 3 years, and would not have helped in the Evelyn Miller case or in the Shelby Dewis case. How would it have helped in the Shelby Dewis case? Well, we think that Wendelsdorf, who was a live-in boyfriend, may have had something to do with the death of Shelby Dewis. However, he went to court and was found to be not guilty by a jury. In the Evelyn Miller case, we're not sure who it was that killed Evelyn Miller, but it was probably connected with one of the buddies of Fredrickson. Fredrickson was a live-in fiancé in the home. how would keeping him 2,000 feet away from Evelyn Miller's school have helped in that case? You see, we're finding remedies for problems that we have, remedies that don't fit the problem. Both of these murders that I mentioned just now are still unsolved murders. Well, what I'm thinking about here is that one of the best things that we can do is to contact, if you believe that your assemblyman, whether that is whether it's a senator or whether it's a fellow in the House of Representatives, you should contact that person. In this case, it's a good idea to concentrate on the committee. It's a subcommittee that is looking into these matters of the 2,000-foot rule. One of the co-chairmen of that committee is Keith Kryman. I'll give you a little bit of information here. Would you get your pencil out and scratch down his email address and his home phone, and give him a call and tell him that 2,000-foot rule. Why in the world, Keith, are you pushing for a 2,000-foot rule when there is absolutely no evidence that the 2,000-foot rule will help anybody?
Follow the money trail, maybe, John.
Yeah.
And I would like to make a sarcastic comment. Why not 2001 foot?
Right. Yeah.
Or 1999?
And if 2,000 is good, why not make it 5,000 or 10,000? And why not make sure that those who are caught for stealing and get out of jail be required to stay 2,000 feet away from a cash register? You see, it makes as much sense, doesn't it? And that's what one of the fellows on the committee said. Well, here's probably a pretty well-meaning senator, Senator Keith Kryman. And I think he wants to push for the 2,000-foot rule, even though it doesn't make sense. Now they're talking about having a zone around the school so that these people can't be in the zone. Well, I'm not sure that the zone arrangement would be the very best. Keith Kryman at legis.state.ia.us is his email. I'm sorry, it's Keith.Kryman, Kreiman, at legis.state.ia.us. Let's take a look at a co-chairman here, Don, of the committee, and see if we can. This is a gentleman by the name of, let's see if we can find his name up here, Larry McKibben. He's a co-chairman of this committee, and they would appreciate knowing what it is that you think about the 2,000-foot rule, because they've been commissioned by the legislature to bring a report early in the next session as to what to do. I'm not sure that this silly idea that they want to copy from Illinois about the about not being around or about having zones, about finding sexual abusers in zones. That simply means that you couldn't be on a bike path. You know, if you own a bicycle and you've bicycled all your life, and you bicycle to work, and you bicycle to church, and you bicycle to club meetings, and you bicycle to picnics and so forth. Now, simply because you've been charged with child abuse and have served time, you can't bicycle anymore. Some of these are downright silly ideas, but here's Larry McKibben, LARRY.MCKIBBEN, at legis.state.ia.us. Did you have enough time to write down his phone number too? He's from Marshalltown. So you could contact either one of these two gentlemen. There's also an attorney who I think he works on the judiciary. Do you have that one, Don? Okay, there should be three of them. Okay. And this fellow might be able to be of some assistance. Jeff Angelo. Jeff Angelo is from, I think he's from Creston. Media consultant of all things. Okay, Jeff Angelo from Creston, Iowa. JEFF.ANGELO@legis.state.ia.us. Okay, so those are three different individuals. I better hold on his home phone here if you would like to get a hold of any one of these three individuals. Tell them that you don't want them to be playing around with these silly laws that are going to cost us $12 million a year eventually. We're going to work our way up to it because they're only going to cost us $5 million in the meantime. But in 4 years, it's going to be $12 million to work on these silly programs. Well, I'm glad. Did you have, here's another example of, here's another reminder about how you can get a copy of the Diogenes magazine. Let's see, do we have it in the right spot here?
Yes, only $29 for the whole year.
Okay.
And it's supporting a good cause, which is legal reform.
And anything we can do, you know, to help other individuals, because I think that's what it's going to take. In a future program, we're going to have Don tell us a little bit, give us a preview of what he's likely to bring on a future program regarding some articles that he's read about in Utah. Give us just a quick rundown on those, Don.
Oh, that's about one of several cases in Utah where the DHS out there is destroying families, and they started a class action lawsuit out there. So it's going on all around the country what DHS is just doing to parents, destroying them. John?
Okay, there are several things I'd like to see happen in the General Assembly. I believe that we should be able to find some assemblymen who would be willing to stand up regardless of whether they get reelected, because I think a lot of them don't want to stand up now because they think that'll be their last term if they stand up and do something that's right. So they're willing to do something that's wrong. Let's find some assemblymen who are willing to stand up and say, shut off the 2,000-foot rule. And I think you probably should compensate these people for the expenses that they've had in trying to follow the rules so far. If you've done something wrong, own up to it, Mr. Legislator, and let these people go. Do not hold them hostage to a silly, stupid rule. I think that it's a shame if we have a legislature that is so incompetent as to pass a silly law like this. I think it would be to their credit if they would simply shut down the 2,000-foot rule. See you next